Right Away with Craig Murray. For more information, visit cmurray.com. Introduction, Conflict, and Resolution. There are 1,000 different books on how to write, and they all give variations on a theme. And I know some writers who become addicted to reading books about writing, which is, great and all, but they really need to focus more on actually writing than reading about writing. One thing I've noticed rather consistently are the countless variations in what makes up the parts of a story. Every single author of writing books has their own version, their own template, their own idea of what you need to do. Some of them become incredibly convoluted. They have a dozen different steps or items that must be included for your story to be successful. The big problem, of course, is they're hard to follow. You have so many steps or points you have to maintain, and if you forget one, you're doomed. So I'm going to offer you my own tried and true version. Like I said, there's variations, but if you really think about it, what it all comes down to is this. Your story must have an introduction, a conflict, a resolution. That's it. 3 things. Only 3 things you have to remember. Every other list will basically lead you to the same 3 things, but they'll do it in 20 parts. It doesn't matter whether you're writing a short story, a novella, a novel, your chapters will have these 3 things, and so will your short. The introduction. This opener sets things up. It introduces the reader to the feel they're going to expect from the rest of the story and the rest of the writing. It should be interesting. It should be something that captures the reader right away and makes them want to turn the page. It's your setup. You establish the flavor of the story and tell the reader immediately what to expect, why they should keep reading. It's your hook. Get it in there. The conflict. This can happen on page 1 or page 50. The seeds of it should be established fairly early. You want to build up tension, get people thinking about the big problem that's going to happen. The problem could be underway right from the start. Your intro and initial conflict can be parts of the same thing. Why do you need a conflict? Simple answer. Because your story's boring without one. It's a meandering scene. It doesn't matter what you're writing, it doesn't matter the style or the genre, you need some sort of conflict. Something that's happening that's driving your characters forward. It can be something that's forcing your characters backwards, but something needs to happen. Now, a few examples of a very basic, very quick introduction just to explain what I mean. The tall stalk swayed in the early summer breeze. Victoria walked quietly, enjoying the feeling of the dewy, dappled grasses against her legs. Her small dog bounded and ran about her feet as she looked towards the family estate and the rolling countryside. So this might be the start to a romantic period story. We have the lovely woman doing lovely things in a lovely world. Unless Godzilla is suddenly and inexplicably going to appear, we have a pretty good idea of what the flavor of the story is going to be. You've established the feeling. You've identified the main character in their world right off the bat. Now the reader has someone to associate with. Another example. The explosions ripped through the morning air. Sounds of gunfire and artillery tore across the shattered city. Sergeant Mitchell checked his ammunition before glancing over a shattered part of the wall, readying himself to charge forward. So, totally different feeling, totally different story. This is obviously an action story or war story or something similar. The reader knows they can tell right away what they're getting into, not some long, pointless introduction that doesn't actually introduce anyone or anything. It could be completely generic. Nope. You were there. You know what's going on. You know what to expect. The 61st floor elevator slid open and Martin Caldwell strode out into his law offices of Caldwell in Colorado. "Good morning, Mr. Caldwell," said the receptionist, a very pretty young brunette who was hired to be the first face of the firm. Martin gave her a small smile and nod as he walked past and into the company. Again, totally different feeling and different story. Is there going to be some murder mystery or legal drama? Whatever. But we've established our main character in action and a bit of their personality. If you like stories about people that work in law offices, you should like this. It's right there in the opening paragraph. The conclusion. Without a satisfying conclusion, you have little more than a meandering scene. A reader may forgive you for a lot of sins in the writing. They won't forgive you for a bad ending. If you need any better proof of how a bad ending can ruin a great story, look at the entire Game of Thrones series. For almost a decade, it was a weekly talk around water coolers everywhere. People would gather together to talk about what happened, the conflicts, the resolutions, the upcoming conflicts. People would race past them saying, I haven't watched it yet, don't talk to me. Then we get to the end of the series, and other than outrage, there's silence. People weren't clamoring for reruns. They weren't hoping for more. They were just absolutely and completely disappointed. You don't want to do that. Give your reader a good ending. It doesn't have to be a happy ending. It doesn't have to be all rainbows and puppy dogs and kisses, but it should be a good ending. It should be a memorable ending. Now, people love a happy ending. They want the hero and heroine to ride off into the sunset. They want the good guys to win. They want the bad guys to come to a suitable and terrible ending. You don't always have to do that, but you definitely don't have to dismiss it. I've spoken with writers who become pathological and not wanting to write what the readers want to read because they believe it's somehow cliched. It isn't. Well, not completely. The reason these endings are popular is because people like them. They're satisfied with them, and that's an okay thing to do. We're here as writers for our readers. So, say it with me. The 3 parts to any story is introduction, conflict, resolution. Now, a short story absolutely has to have these 3 things, but even in a novel, your chapters have to have something similar. In a lot of cases, each chapter will have its own introduction, a conflict, a resolution that's part of the overall sweep of the storyline that has its own intro, conflict, and resolution. Now, not every chapter will resolve every conflict. A lot of times, the end of a chapter is almost a cliffhanger. It's a reason for the reader to go to the next chapter. You also don't want to be too formulaic, especially in a novel where every 5,000 to 8,000 words of the chapter, it's just a repetition of, our heroes, oh no, something bad has happened. Phew, thank goodness they escaped. Repeat. But you also want to avoid the meandering conflict where bad things just keep building up and nothing ever gets better. There are some very popular authors who do that, but that's their style, not yours. It's become a little overdone across the writing world of tragedy after tragedy after tragedy until finally you're thinking, my God, you just shoot yourself. Nothing ever gets better. Nothing ever gets resolved. The bad things just keep happening, and that's tedious and repetitive. Don't do it. Think of the conflict and the resolution in your story like riding a roller coaster. You're going up and up and up, and the tension's building. Suddenly you're screaming as you go downward into the chaos of the conflict. Just when you think you can't take anymore, you slow down for a bit, catch your breath in a flat spot. You smile and think, well, that was something else. And then it happens all over again. It's exhilarating, it's exciting, it's not exhausting. You want to do that with your reader. Build up attention, excite them, give them a release, rinse and repeat.